When I was in my early childhood to my teens, I went and I stayed with my uncle every summer on a plot of land he owned. My uncle was a really cool dude, kind of a stoner, but not a bad guy. Anyway, he lived not too far away from a reservation, so we would go there a lot, most because I had a huge crush on this girl. We'll call her Tulip. But since we hung around there so much, I was introduced to a lot of their local legends. One in particular was the voice in the forest. According to legend, many people had disappeared in the woods surrounding the reservation. Super creepy, considering we had to walk through said woods to get to and from the reservation. But as they're telling this story, I'm putting on my best I ain't afraid of no ghost face, because I'm sitting close to Tulip, and I want her to think that I'm cool. I guess it worked. We've been happily married for almost 5 years now. Anyway, the story had me scared shitless, but I thought it was just a story. Creepy as fuck, but just a story, nonetheless. We end up falling asleep next to the fire pit with the rhythmic pounding of drums and the heat from the flames lulling us. We woke up several hours later and my uncle checks his phone. It's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. So we grab our shit and we hit the road. We're walking back, talking randomness. Mostly girls. He constantly teased me about my crush on Tulip, who in 11 years was the only girl I had ever been attracted to, which still rings true to this day. It's probably a 35-minute walk through the woods, and we're about 15 minutes in. We fall into silence because we're going through a rough area, and we're both out of breath. Me probably more so than he. But anyway, out of the darkness, I heard this loud whistling, and my uncle grips my hand harder. So apparently, he had heard it too. I chalked it up to our friends playing a prank on us, but it got scary, fast. The whistling continued getting louder, and I heard them start calling my name. It sounded like Tulip, but I knew it wasn't. She was calling me by my real name. To put this into perspective, I was adopted when I was a few months old, and had both of my names legally changed. I knew what my birth name was, but what frightened me more was that whatever was out there in the darkness knew too. I remembered the story that the chief was telling. If you ever hear the voices in the woods, don't look for them. Don't even acknowledge their existence. I did my best to stare straight ahead. I kept staring straight ahead with my chin held high. Meanwhile, my peripheral vision is going nuts. My uncle squeezed my hand so hard I thought my hand might break. He looked furious. I had to wonder why. Maybe it was because they were using my real name. I never asked him. We didn't talk about it. We walked until we saw his property line and bolted to the door. Though the voices had stopped, we still didn't sleep. I could swear whatever was out there would come bursting through the window at any second. The other thing that happened on his property, I was up there for winter break, and me and my uncle went ice fishing on his pond. It wasn't gigantic by any means, maybe a mile across and maybe 20 feet deep. Anyway, my uncle had run back to the house to start lunch for us. He was gone maybe 20 minutes when he had gotten a bite. I went over to check the line and fell through the ice. I basically went directly into shock. It was pitch black and so cold. I remember holding my breath and looking around for anything, any sign of anything. I was so sure I was going to die. My lungs were straining, and I couldn't find the crack in the ice that I had fallen through. I'm not entirely sure if you can cry underwater, but I felt like I may have started. Then I saw something. I knew it was impossible, but I looked anyway. I could see her through the pitch black of the water around me. What struck me was that she was all that I could see. She was a very cute young girl wearing an old-style dress. She was clutching a teddy bear under her arm and pointing to an area above her head. She wasn't moving at all. Her hair was lying flat and her clothes weren't drifting in the water. She stood motionless. It was probably only a few seconds, but this image was permanently etched into my brain. I remember she was a bluish silver color. and it was like we were in a tunnel. She gave a luminescent glow that somehow didn't touch the water around her. It was almost as if she was the light. It was the most surreal experience of my life. I knew I should be scared. I'm staring into the face of someone that is obviously a ghost, but I wasn't. I put my hand to the bottom of the ice and I started to pull myself forward. Somehow I felt a second wind of sorts. I crawled along faster until I was directly above her, and there, under a small sheen of ice, was the area I had fallen through. I smashed it and crawled out back through the hole. I looked down and the girl gave me a smile before she blinked out of existence. It was more like the water collapsed in on the area she was standing. I removed my clothes and ran to my uncle's house to get warmed up. He took one look at me and began freaking out, asking me what had happened. Was I okay? Did I need medical attention? The usual questions. I told him I was fine. I had just fallen through the ice, which of course made him freak out even worse. I assured him once again that I was fine and began telling him how he had caught something and I'd gotten up to check on it and fell through. I was hesitant to tell him about the little girl, but I decided it would be better to do so to see if he could maybe shed any light on it. So later, as we're watching some TV and eating, I decide to ask him about it. Unc, can I tell you something? Of course, Honor King. What's up? Is it Tulip? No, Unc. When I fell through the water today, I saw something. Maybe I was dreaming or seeing things, but I think it's real. What did you see? I told him about the little girl, and as I described her, he went ghost white. No pun intended. I told him about the teddy bear and how she smiled at me before she disappeared. He began crying and told me about his sister who drowned in the pond when they were kids. I knew that I had an aunt who had passed away at a young age, but I was never privy to the cause until that day. I assumed she had died of natural causes or something. She had been found still clutching her teddy bear. My uncle later took me to her grave, and I thanked her for saving my life. A few days passed before I saw her again. I woke up on the couch, and she was standing there. I remember the overwhelming sense of calm that came over me as she said, "You are welcome," and disappeared just as quickly as she had come.